Everybody wants peptides right now. You probably heard of peptides like BPC 157, ipamorelin, CJC, retatrutide, GLP-1s, tesamorelin, all this stuff. So fat loss stacks, longevity stacks, metabolic stacks, all this stuff. And what I'm seeing is people are pinning shit they saw on TikTok from a guy with abs, in a Bluetooth earpiece acting like he just cracked the Da Vinci Code or something. And meanwhile, there's nobody getting baseline labs. Never mind, we're not even going to talk about the problem with buying peptides from gray market research only facilities. There's no cardiovascular markers, no metabolic data, no clue what their insulin is, no clue if their kidneys are stressed, inflammation, hormones, etc. But somehow they're calling this like optimizing. But what you're not doing is optimizing. You're just experimenting blindly. And trust me, I've done this myself. I've done it the smart way and I've done it also the dumb way. And the dumb way is flying blindly. And the reason is a lot of people think peptides are just magic because you might feel something, a boost of energy, appetite suppression, better pumps at the gym, sleep improvement, maybe a shift on the scale, which is great. But symptoms or just going off how you feel can lie to you. And you can feel better while some of your markers are worsening silently. You can lose weight while sacrificing tissue you don't want to be losing. You could be suppressing appetite while driving up hormones like cortisol. You can increase growth hormone signaling to improve your recovery while your fasting glucose is getting out of control and your blood pressure is spiking and so on. So that's why before we ever touch peptide therapy inside weaponized wellness, we want objective data with our patients. Because here's the deal. If you're not measuring what matters, you're just gambling with compounds that you don't really know what's happening. So what I'm going to do today, because this is a topic I hear people say, like, you need labs before peptides, but people don't know what that means. So I'm going to do a little deep dive to teach you about why it's important to get labs before you even consider doing, never mind hormone therapy, but even peptide therapy, right? Like talking about what baseline labs matter, why symptom tracking alone is not a good way to decide how effective the therapy is working, what type of biomarkers we monitor with different peptides, which peptides affect which markers, and healthy ranges you want to be in first before ever considering peptides, and why like half the internet and most of these biohackers themselves are just metabolic dumpster fires. So anyways, first, let's talk about the biggest mistake that people are making is that before they start therapy, they're not understanding the terrain of their body. And this is like hiring a construction crew before like checking the foundation, right, of the home they're going to build on top of, because people they're attracted to this sexy stuff like fat loss and muscle building, stronger boners, better sleep, anti-aging, stuff like that. But nobody wants to spend the money on understanding objectively, like where am I starting from with my baseline physiology, like fasting insulin, important cholesterol markers like ApoB, high sensitive C-reactive protein, actual liver and kidney markers that matter, hormone balances, thyroid status, etc. Because these labs, they force you to check in with reality. And while you might feel okay or feel that your peptides are working, your internal physiology could be saying otherwise, especially as you age. Symptoms alone are not enough to be tracking how well you're doing on a peptide protocol. Okay, I feel amazing, awesome, but what does your biology say? What does your blood pressure say? What does your body composition say? And most importantly, what do your lab biomarkers say? So these are all objective markers versus subjective feelings. So an example would be somebody taking on, say, a GLP-1 peptide, or a tirzepatide, or a triple agonist, retatrutide, or retatrutide, however you want to say it. And let's say they lose 20 pounds in 3 months and they feel great. But if we look deeper, in a lot of cases, you could have just lost, say 40% of that as lean tissue. Your fasting blood sugar might still be out of control. Cholesterol markers might be a disaster. Your HDL might be tanked. Your cortisol might be elevated. So your hydration status could be shitty. So it's very, very important. It doesn't mean the peptide wasn't effective or didn't work. It just means that you have to be intelligent of how you're managing these things and looking at other very critical lifestyle factors, such as nutrition protocols, protein intake, stimuli like strength training, your sleep patterns, how much water are you drinking, things like that. Because listen, you're not optimizing otherwise. Don't lie to yourself. You're just taking it on an experiment to see what happens, right? Another example would be people that start growth hormone optimizers like CJC 1295, ipamorelin, tesamorelin. And they could think like, oh man, I'm sleeping better, I'm recovering better, but what's going on with your IGF-1, which is the hormone you're trying to influence, right? What does your fasting blood sugar and your fasting insulin say? Are you developing any symptoms you're completely minimizing, like edema or your blood pressure, right? So you can't manage what you don't measure. Really smart people have come up with that moniker because it's true. So let's talk about some biomarkers you want to absolutely measure if you're going to start any sort of peptide therapies. Let's talk about metabolic biomarkers first, such as fasting insulin. The reason I choose this one is because it's so critical and it's so minimized by allopathic medicine. Fasting insulin is, after you slept a full night and fasted, within 2 hours of waking, ideally in a metabolically healthy person, it should be in a certain range, single digit, preferably close to the number 5 or less. Tells us how insulin sensitive you are, okay? One of the most important markers in, modern health. So people want to look at their A1s. The first thing that happens before your A1C is dysfunctional, which is like a 3 to 4 month snapshot of your blood sugar, is your fasting blood sugar and your fasting insulin becomes dysregulated. So, you want to be under 5 in most healthy metabolic cases, because when your insulin is high, you're going to be more likely to store fat. You're more likely to be producing inflammation, unwanted inflammation. Your cardiovascular risk increases and your metabolic flexibility decreases. So like relevant peptides, you're going to want to make sure you're measuring your fasting insulin or all the GLP meds, peptides. So the tirzepatides, the semaglutides, the retatrutides, all that, and including some of the regulators. So some of the energy peptides that people are taking, right, to improve their mitochondrial function and health, like MOTS-C and NAD. You're going to want to check these things, okay? You want to check your insulin sensitivity. You want to check your glucose control. So, which brings me to A1C, right? You definitely want to be measuring this one. In a lot of physicals, I just see fasting blood sugar. That's it. Which is a quick snapshot of what your blood sugar was, preferably first thing in the morning, fasted after a good night's sleep. It does give us relevant data. The A1C really gives us an idea of like, what's your blood sugar balance over the course of 3 to 4 months. It's the life cycle of a red blood cell. Again, these are relevant for peptides like weight loss peptides, such as all the GLPs, MOTS-Cs, the NADs, and so on. So, normal A1C doesn't always mean optimal metabolic health if your fasting insulin's elevated, for example, or your fasting blood sugar. So let's talk about cholesterol. By far the most important cholesterol particle you could measure when it comes to your risk factors is ApoB. And this one you're not going to get at a typical physical because it's not generally monitored, right? They're monitoring your LDL, HDL, total cholesterol, triglycerides, which do tell some of the story, but only a little bit of it. If you want to know your actual atherogenic risk profile, ApoB tells us about the number of actual atherogenic particles capable, of penetrating arterial walls, particularly in an environment of inflammation. A healthy target, it's known that, under 80 is desirable. You definitely want lower for higher risk individuals. Because, you can be focusing on all this weight loss and this energy increase and still have like worsening cardiovascular risk, which is not smart. So you have to really be intelligent measuring these things when you're monitoring, body recomposition protocols, weight loss. Let's talk about high sensitive C-reactive protein, also not in general physicals, but this is a marker of systemic inflammation. Healthy individuals need to be under 1.0. Okay, the lower the better. And this is when we open up the discussion about peptides such as BPC 157, thymosin beta 4, TB 500, AVP, SS31, all these healing and regenerative protocols that people are familiar with. Ones that I've used post-surgical for when I broke my leg, dislocated my ankle. And what you're hoping to see reduced inflammation burden, improved recovery environments. All right. You want to make sure you're giving these peptides to a metabolically healthy individual. You don't want to be, just throwing these expensive peptides on somebody where they're otherwise far more intelligent to start, focusing on other things. The saying I like to use is don't step over dollars to pick up dimes. If you're drinking alcohol, sleeping like crap, stressed out of your mind, eating like an asshole and not moving your body, there is no friggin' point in spending all this time and money on, healing peptides. Let's look at your blood work. Let's find out why you ended up in this mess in the first place. These peptides are very specific for people that are putting in the work and, they want additional benefit. They want, actual biohacking. You cannot biohack somebody who's a metabolic dumpster fire. I'm sorry. You can't do that. Let's talk about insulin-like growth factor. This is on all of the weaponized wellness baseline and advanced panels that we do. It's huge for monitoring the effectiveness of growth hormone peptides. Okay, you want to get a baseline IGF-1 before you start any growth hormone peptides. Okay, otherwise you're just going off how you feel and what's happening day to day. I can tell you that this isn't like taking somatropin. It's not like taking actual growth hormone. You're looking to increase the signaling of your natural growth hormone, and you're looking to increase it to increase the amount of IGF-1 that's converted in the liver. This is what you're looking for when you're looking for anti-aging benefits. Better healing. You're looking for, joint health, better recovery at the gym, fat loss, particularly like visceral fat loss, etc. So listen, monitoring your visceral fat with a body composition machine, also making sure you're measuring your IGF-1 levels, because otherwise, like, these are slow building benefits that, you're going to want to do these peptides for at least 3 months. It's not going to be an overnight, like, wow, I feel amazing. They're not, magic pills. Okay. Because like, if you want to see if it's actually working, you have to measure downstream signaling, right? So, and the thing is, more is not always better. This is important for checking like dosing protocols. You want optimization and not just like reckless escalation, nor do you want to continue spending time and money doing things that aren't working effectively, objectively under the hood, etc. Keeping in mind that IGF-1 isn't the only thing that you want to see shift with these growth hormone signaling peptides, but it is one that is important to monitor. So comprehensive metabolic panels are generally in most physical, like general basic physical blood work, but basics like AST, ALT doesn't tell you the whole story when it comes to your liver health. GGT is a much better actual understanding of your liver metabolic stress. So listen, if you're someone who already has fatty liver, insulin resistance, inflammation, alcohol issues, poor nutrition, you want to know that before you take on any therapies like GLP-1 therapies, triple agonists, metabolic peptides, oral compounds, stuff like that. So you'd want to see improved liver health over time with these, not worsening liver health, right? Reduce fatty liver burden. You want to measure triglycerides. Okay, this AST, ALT, GGT, improve metabolic markers, cholesterol, etc. Kidney function also very, very important. All right. On basic panels, you're going to see creatinine, EGFR, BUN. Those are not the only markers you want to look at. You want to look at cystatin C also, especially if you're looking for rapid weight loss protocols with weight loss peptides. You're going to want to be very careful, even with different nutritional strategies for dehydration. Okay, you want to watch your electrolyte balances, intense training protocols. You want to make sure you're hydrating well, okay, and not stressing your kidneys. And let's be honest, like half the people buying peptides online, like they're probably drinking a few sips of water a day, drinking caffeine and living on like that type of lifestyle. So very important, which brings me to CBC and hematocrit levels. Very important to manage your blood viscosity levels because this is indicative of things like your clotting risk, oxygen carrying capacity, of hemoglobin in general, your inflammation trends, etc. So this is especially relevant when you're combining peptide therapies with testosterone optimization, but also like growth hormone secretagogues, like I mentioned, especially if you're looking for to change your physique aggressively. Also very important for hydration monitoring. You want to make sure that your hematocrit, hemoglobin, red blood cell balances are healthy. So hormones, thyroid hormone matters, right? Especially if you're someone who, I can tell you that one of the most common symptoms people come to me with are symptoms of fatigue. And a lot of what is espoused out there is like, oh, just take MOTS-C, SS31, NAD, and these things will boost your energy and increase your mitochondrial function. You'll be great. Meanwhile, your TSH, your free T3, your free T4 could be a total disaster. And like these peptides are not going to fix that. So if someone's exhausted, gaining weight, inflamed, metabolically dysfunctional, like throwing peptides at them without identifying the actual root of it is completely lazy. It's irresponsible and it's ineffective. Never mind. And this is part of my gripe with like peptide clinics that are just blindly throwing peptides at people or people just buying peptides online. Like, listen, I'm a proponent of, my body, my choice. Like you take responsibility of your physical health, your medical health. Everyone has, free choice when it comes to what they want to put in their body. But I'm a huge proponent of education as well. So, and people that are practicing, let's say, lazy medicine or operating like peptide vending machines, just asking people what they want. Okay, cool. Here's your stack. And there's no investigation. There's no education. They're not going off of any objective data and there's no follow-up, right? And to me, that's completely insane. You should never look to be injecting yourself and manipulating your physiology without understanding, first of all, your baseline status, your response from the therapy, the trends that are happening, any side effects, risk markers, etc. Because listen, you have to understand that peptides are not magic. They are tools. They are levers you can pull to help optimize. Okay, to help increase some of the signaling in your body to get a result. They're not there to use as something that is going to be a magic pill or an easy button that you can press and all of a sudden, boom, you're going to get the result you want. This goes for GLP meds also. The people that are taking, listen, the statistics don't lie. The vast majority of people that take weight loss peptides, whether it's semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, retatrutide, whatever, they gain all the weight back once they stop. It's inevitable because most of them are not changing how they operate when it comes to their nutritional strategies, their movement and exercise strategies, their sleep protocols. They're not getting any coaching or accountability along with it. So that's why it is what it is. So it's human nature. And why it's important to make sure you have a coach, a physician, somebody who's going to be helping you stay accountable, especially when it comes to like retesting. That is another massive issue, right? People who run peptides never retest their labs. And we have to understand, that's important to understand what they're doing. Like, you want to make sure there's things that aren't showing up that you don't want, and also proof that things are improving, not just based off how you feel, right? For example, did your fasting insulin improve with your peptide therapy if that was one of the targets that you wanted to see improve? Did your inflammation markers improve? Right? Did your body comp improve? Did your IGF-1 move appropriately? Are your lipids improving? Did your liver and kidney health improve? Did your muscle mass stay preserved with this therapy? Because if labs improve and symptoms improve, now we're on the right track. Now we're talking, now we're optimizing in that case. So I hope you're not hearing that I'm anti-peptide. I'm definitely love peptides. I'm a user myself, but I'm intelligently managing my blood work while I'm taking on specific peptide therapies. I think it's one of the most exciting frontiers in medicine and performance and health. But what's happened is reckless social media culture of just pin this and, buy this, take this, and your skin's going to improve and you're going to have massive erections. You're going to have great libido. You're going to put on muscle. It's crazy, right? Just know real optimization requires a strategy. It requires measuring and retesting. It requires accountability, education, and data, right? Your body's not your body isn't a chemistry experiment, but it's not a chemistry experiment for influencers, right? And most people, let's be honest, they don't need more compounds. Most people need to be fixing their sleep, lifting weights and building muscle, hydrating, getting sunlight, getting their feet in the dirt and grounding, getting more movement in general, improving what they're putting in their body, less alcohol, more whole foods, protein-based nutrition, and focusing on lowering their inflammation burden and improving their blood sugar and their insulin sensitivity, right? When you add peptides intelligently while doing this work, you can really see results quickly, okay? That's real optimization. There's no guessing, no hype, okay? If you want to know whether peptides are actually helping you, then make sure you're not just chasing how you feel, right? Make sure you're getting the labs. So that's my rant, my soapbox. I hope that opened up some of the understanding of why it's important to get labs when you're going to take on any peptide therapies. If you want more information, go to weaponizedwellness.com. Shoot me an email, drryan@theweaponizedbody.com. Happy to answer any questions. Check me out on Instagram, The Weaponized Dad, and I'm here to help. And I love and appreciate all of you that listen and give me feedback. And I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.